You're listening to the On My Mind podcast with Remy Keene.
Hello, and welcome to the On My Mind podcast, a podcast where we talk about what's on our mind and how it impacts our day, whether it's for good or for bad. So we want to keep good things on our mind. Today, we're talking with one of my great friends. We actually worked together and we met each other and we really clicked. His name is Josh. Go ahead and introduce yourself really quick.
Hi, my name's Josh. I work with Remy, of course. I love music. I love creating things. I'm happy to be here. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much again for joining me and just being a guest on the podcast. It really means a lot. I'm really glad to have you. As I told you, basically I've always seen you as a kind person and someone who listens well. That's kind of a topic I'm pretty passionate about right now. I want to become a better listener. So I'm picking all my friends' brains who I can think of that are good at listening. And I'm, hey, you help me, right? I love that. So, first off, I always ask every guest that I have, is there anything you do before you go into a situation that you are mindful that you want to be kind to the people? You're, oh, I better do this right before it. Some people say they listen to a good playlist. Some people said they pray about it. Is there anything you do that you could give real tips to any of the listeners or audience that might benefit them?
I think that if I can spread the mindset of wanting to be in a happier place by I don't know by I feel like if you can listen to somebody and you know what they're kind of looking for in the moment, and you can make their day just like a little bit brighter, you can make them smiler. If everybody's smiling in a room, I feel like the room's just a little bit happier, and I love being in happy rooms. I guess so. As long as I can make somebody smile, or I can take some stress off somebody and just kind of make their day a little bit easier, and make them a little bit happier, I feel like that's the only thing that I'm looking forward to in any form of contact with anybody. I just want to make somebody happy.
So, making somebody happy, how would you, I guess, recognize that you've succeeded in that?
Um, you know, I feel like there's certain types of there's body language that people give off where like they could be a little mopey, like drooping their shoulder,
Yeah.
or I mean, like just a frown, or you can tell if something's on their mind, and um, if a smile, of course, that's going to be the biggest thing. That's going to tell you that their day at least got a little bit brighter. Sometimes you'll give somebody a compliment on like the shirt that they're wearing, and then they jump up in posture a little
Oh,
bit, stand
oh,
up a
thank
little bit
you.
taller. Yeah, like it's a great shirt. I love the yellow. It looks great on you. Your beard looks really good today. Like stuff like that. And just a smile on their face is always fun to see.
I find it super rewarding, especially to be able to brighten someone's day. You can see that they're down and then you make them a little more up. Oh my gosh, how rewarding is that? I can think about certain people, especially at work. That's where you are more times than probably anywhere else that you go.
Yeah.
So take it with you to work, which I love being able to talk about work with you, and you know exactly what I mean. You see people walking around with the "Oh, I don't
Mhm.
want to be here" type of face, and you're like, man, I wish I could show you how awesome you could feel if you just got a little bit more positivity,
Yeah.
going. It's like, let's joke about things or laugh about something, look up dad jokes just to share like kindness to people, right? And oh, I heard this great dad joke and I want to share it with you real quick.
I'm ready for it.
It's okay if you've heard it, but yeah. Have you ever ridden in one of the new Cybertrucks, like the Tesla Cybertrucks?
I've never ridden one, but I know what they are. They look
Okay.
cool.
Well, apparently they don't really have like a new car smell. They more have like a Elon Musk. Oh my gosh, it's so awful. But it makes people smile, right?
I
It's
can't
like
help but smile. Yeah, it's just it's great.
an Elon Musk. And I just kept telling myself it. And I'm like, that way I can laugh along with people. And like kind people stress less. You're not going to have to
Mhm.
worry about as much stuff. That's something I always talk about on the podcast, is like what you keep on your mind impacts your day. So if you're going to keep negativity on your mind and just be down, it's hard to dig yourself back out of that gutter, right?
Yeah.
That you get in. But if you go about it positively, crap's still going to hit you. Things are still going to fly at you, and this sucks. But if you start up here, you'll get knocked down here.
It's like you have a good
But if you
safety
start
net.
here or here, it'll drop all the way, right? What
Yeah.
were you going to say?
It's like having a good safety net, you know. If you start the day off higher, then sure, you know, you may have somebody say like, I don't know, something doesn't make you feel too nice, you know, somebody could be a little bit mean to you, but at the end of the day, that took you, like you said, from here to here. So it's in the whole scheme of the day, it's really not that much as long as you keep a more positive attitude.
Right. Absolutely. Do you ever find yourself more energized because you're starting your day that way?
Yeah, I feel like I can roll out of bed and not want to roll out of bed, and that happens a lot. You know, like
Sure.
you wake up early and you don't really want to get up, but if you if you're thinking about the rest of the day and you know that it's going to be a long day, I feel like trying to force myself into that positive mindset, it does kind of put a smile on my face, you know? Get a nice cup of
Awesome.
coffee in the morning. The ritual of kind of get everything ready kind of gets me into that mindset. And yeah, it does help. It does help because you can see people that aren't in that same mindset and like everything's kind of groggy, but you know, I get to sit down and smile and hopefully tell a cool dad joke, you know, and make their day a little bit brighter.
Yeah, there you go. One of the things I can think of, like you said earlier, right? Share a smile. It's as easy as that. Just smile at somebody, especially if you've already created a relationship with them and you're like, hey, we already know we're cool. It's like, just what's up, right? Or, hey, how are you? You know, anything like that just will
Yeah.
brighten your day. What are some other things you can think of that might be a way you could brighten someone's day?
Um, I'm glad you're here. You know, even like you said, just acknowledging their presence. I mentioned this before, but taking the stress off of somebody's shoulders. If I feel like I don't have that much to do in a day, you know, and I see somebody that looks a little bit stressed, you know, what can I do for you today? You know, how can I make your day easier? Do you have any projects that you are looking to like get done that you need help with, stuff like that? Like it's like acts of service towards people. I enjoy doing stuff like that for sure.
I love that because you said acts of service. That's one of the love languages. And really, you're just showing kindness and love to other people when you do that. And then that also gets you noticed in a way. You know, that shouldn't be the reason you seek it. But I always talk about when you sow kindness, you're going to reap that back. When I go and I show people that I'm willing to help and I'm the person that can fill in for you if you need me, then I'm going to be looked at more as an asset and someone they want to keep around. Versus if I go in, I'm complaining, I don't know if I want to do that, and I'm
Mhm.
negative about it, they're going to remember, oh, maybe I shouldn't hit them up to do anything. So it's in a way self promotion without you even trying if you're just kind to other people. it's
Yeah.
it's fun the way that turns out, right?
Yeah, I like it a lot. You know, it's you always want to surround yourself with people that make you feel better, and if you can make other people feel better, it kind of spreads that positive attitude, and they can start making you feel better whenever you're having an off day. And you know, once you start getting that social circle ready to go, where everybody's just kind of going with a nice day, it's great. So,
Right, right.
yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about listening to others. Just and then honestly, the conversation can go anywhere from there. Listening and actually hearing people out. I had a previous episode with Kirsten, one of my good friends, and we talked about how listening to people is just really the only way you can truly empathize with them and get into, you know, their thought patterns and their things. If you listen to where they're coming from first, it's probably going to make you a little bit less biased. And you sometimes don't even know you're being biased until you're like, oh, well, I thought this, and then you just proved that wrong. So maybe I should listen to you. So have you ever been in a situation where you like listen to someone and just kind of an aha moment?
Ah, aha moment. I'm trying to think of places at work,
Sure.
or stuff like that, where I like really empathize with somebody on. Oh,
For,
my mind's blanket. I don't
that's
know. I
okay.
feel like.
For me, it's sometimes the old ladies that
Oh
call.
yeah.
And I'm like, she wants this to work so much, right? Like, and I care so much to help her do that, but I just don't think she gets it. I don't think she's going to get to where we get. But then I start asking her questions. What have you tried so far? What have you done that led you to this point? Where did you get stuck? Tell me about how you got here. And then when she starts to tell her story, I'm like, "Oh, she knows a little bit more than I expected her to." Right?
Mhm.
So maybe that could help spark something.
I feel like whenever anybody starts talking to you, whether it's on a call or whether you're just catching up with a friend, it's like a little snippet into their story, into their own little world that you can truly only get that perspective whenever they're telling you, right? Somebody like in films, you can always you can use those to portray emotions and things like that. But the true visceral reality of how people are feeling in that moment or in their day, you only get by them sharing that experience, by them communicating that to you. And if you're not listening to that, then you are stuck in your own little world. And like you said, you have biases that you don't really know that exist, like flavors of food. I think about like the cilantro gene. I had no idea that people thought that tasted like soap. I love cilantro. You have that? Yeah,
I
it's like
have that. I taste
yeah,
soap. I
it
kind of
tastes
still
like
like it because it's just gentle soap. Like it's not crazy. But I've heard people like just pure soap. But mine's more like leafy fun with some Dawn dish soap in there.
yeah, it's like stuff like that nobody would ever know about if you didn't tell anybody about it, right? So not only am I gonna make you some guacamole with cilantro in it, and you're gonna eat soapy guacamole, but I also like wouldn't know to not put that in other things as well. It's just something so unique to that person that you never really find that perspective,
Right.
without communicating or listening to them.
That's really good. That also makes me think of how, certain people like picture images in their heads
Mm.
versus like some people picture words when they're thinking out words. And I'm a little of both, but I've heard that some people just can't do like words straight up, like reading words. They will picture whatever the word means to them and vice versa. And I'm like, I can do both. Like, and when I'm more creative, it's the pictures. When I'm more get this data in me, it's more the word just imprinting, like that I see in my mind, and I'm like, are all people are like that, right? And then no, like people have conversation about it. Or like when I close my eyes, one of the weirdest things I've described to people, and you all will probably think I'm psycho, but when I close my eyes, I don't see black. I don't see darkness. I see like a red hue and like imprints of colors. And then if I leave them shut long enough, things are like traveling at me, and it feels like I'm like traveling down a tunnel. It's crazy, right? But I've talked to other people who have seen that same thing when they close their eyes. And I've talked to other people who are like, no, that's just black. I don't, you're just wrong. Like, so that's good because also maybe they're feeling a certain type of way that day, but they're putting on a mask because I feel like I have to do that sometimes, right?
Oh yeah.
But then if you start asking them and they're like, yeah, it's good. Well, obviously it's not good, right?
Yeah.
They're just giving you the one-off answer, but then that's your responsibility to at that point prompt them and be like, I can tell that's not the truth. If you're open to talking to me about it, I'm here. Like, but I don't want to step on, step over a boundary line that you have or anything. So if you need someone, I'm here, right? And that's a fine line you have to learn to walk, but it's like, am I close enough with this person that I can do that, or am I in a like a leadership role to where maybe I need to do it whether I'm comfortable with them or not. So, do you have anything that sparks with you at all?
Yeah, I feel like I really struggle with having those types of conversations with people, just because like I personally, like I do put on that mask where even if I'm having a bad day, I don't want to like impose that on somebody else, you know, or cause somebody else to have a bad day, which I know is bad. It's like bottling up emotions, and you should always have like an outlet of people to tell. And I would love to be there whenever somebody like is having a poor day where they're something's really messing with them. And I feel like I struggle with those conversations just because I don't personally open up like that. But you know, with that being said, practice makes perfect, and so the more you do it, the more you get comfortable with it, I suppose. Yeah, those I feel like those conversations tend to be the most like deep conversations as well, where like mental work, I want to say, where you're like kind of like processing through things. Those conversations
Yeah,
can be the most fruitful. So I wish I was better with those conversations, but I tend to avoid them just because they're so uncomfortable for me. Just because I just never have those conversations. I'd say that's
sure.
yeah.
No, that makes sense. And honestly, like without practice, without like doing it more often, I sucked at it too. I was like one what for instance, like when I was a kid and my uncle had just passed away, a couple of my aunts showed up on my doorstep and was like, "Hey, we wanted to come by and tell you that your uncle, passed away." And I was like, "Oh, okay, thanks for telling us. Have a good day." And shut the door. I didn't know what else to say. I'm like, "Ah!" And, like, ever since then, like, death, is just the most awkward subject. I It is so hard for me to be proactive in talking about it. Like, honestly, I'm like, I don't know what people need, so I'm just gonna like hang back, and if because I don't want them to feel overwhelmed or like they have to put on a mask for me, because that's what I would feel like in the situation. So I'm just like, I'm a step back and just leave you to it. If you need me, you'll reach out, right? Well, then I let one of my best friends down by doing that instead of actually reaching out. So
Right.
it's like, it's better to reach out, and it's better to go outside of that comfort zone, especially if they're a good friend, right? And I wish I could change that. What happened in that situation, because it's like one of my best friends, dude, like lost someone who meant a lot to him, and I wasn't available. I wasn't there, and I should have been. And it's something that, we've reconciled, we've talked about it. I absolutely recognized my opportunity, but I don't want to let it happen again. And like eventually when I lose my, close people around me, I'm like, I want people to reach out, right? Because I'm not going to burden other people also. I'm not going to be the one to reach out. So I didn't mean to take it to a super dark place, but I feel like having a conversation about being proactive and kindness and showing people love, the time they need kindness the most is at a time of mourning and loss. If they've just lost someone they love, obviously need some love in their life, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's crazy. But do you have any like story or situation that you would be able to tell around like how listening has aided you to be more empathetic to another person?
Mm. I think in work we see that all the time. Like you were mentioning before, if somebody calls in and they don't really know like you know like what happened with their account, or like how to function on a phone, or 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 how to troubleshoot something, you know, it's initially whenever I think about like not growing up with tech or just like not being comfortable in those types of spaces, it is kind of foreign to me. And then whenever you start hearing like kind of how their thought process goes when they're when they're troubleshooting something, you know, or like if you move that to a more, I guess, like personal situation with how somebody would be troubleshooting their own feelings and like processing their own feelings in a situation. Like I was saying before, you only really truly know what they're thinking about it, like what they're thinking about if they tell that to you, and
Yeah.
if you listen to what they're telling you, because I think it is kind of a gift to be able to do that, you know, like not every species. I was thinking like it's such a crazy gift that humanity has the ability to communicate through verbal, you know, verbal speech like that, and to have like such complex thought be transmitted like empathy, you know. A huge tangent.
It's okay.
um
It was good because, like, what like, the fact that we can empathize is a gift, and we should do it with other people, right? It shouldn't be something that you just want empathy. Like, you should obviously see my position. Like, we should obviously see their position, right? Instead of putting it on someone else to empathize with you, be the first to empathize with them.
yeah, I wish it was innate, honestly. You know, I wish it was something that like everybody was just able to do, because I feel like the world would be a much kinder place if that were the case. You know, I feel like the idea of not empathizing with something is extremely selfish. Like it's
Yeah.
like in all forms of that nature, but it's selfish to not empathize like that. And you know, there have been situations where I haven't empathized, you know, like past relationships,
Sure.
stuff like that, where you know I was headstrong, and I was, what's the word, stubborn, you know, about not wanting to see somebody else's way, and it really
Yeah.
damages relationships. You know, it can really damage like social relationships, it can damage work relationships. It's just I it's hard for me to see a world where you wouldn't want to empathize, which is kind of ironic as well because you have to empathize with it. But
Yeah.
it's yeah, I it feels like such a necessary thing with communication and with like building a social life, that you would need to empathize and be able to empathize with others to have a successful and happy social life, you know.
100%. The thing I think about when I want empathy with someone else, when I want that ability, relationships like close friendships, like, you know, significant others, you need that empathy every single day. One thing I've noticed for sure is if my irritability or my anger level is higher, my empathizer, it's almost non-existent, right? And you know, we refer to work a lot because I mean it's what we do, right? But like when I'm on a call with a customer and I'm like, I really don't care, just stop. I'm like, no, you stop and think about if you were in this situation, right? I that's the thing you have to think about. So like what I've done in my own life now is if I'm ever having an argument with my wife or with a good friend, I'm like, stop, Jeremy, and listen to your own advice that you give to people on your podcast and say, how would I approach this if I weren't angry about the situation? How would I do it? Take a step outside of yourself and give yourself advice. So, like, there was this exercise that one of my previous guests described, and I think had to do with Freud, right? And basically, it was like a game or like a goggles virtual reality simulator where it was a game where it had you basically describe your worst day and just your how awful it was, and then it put you over into the therapist's chair that was listening to you tell your story back to yourself, and then it was your job to give yourself advice. And I'm like,
Whoa.
you need to everyone needs to know how to do that. Like, step outside of what you're experiencing and just give yourself advice. Like, and do I give the best advice all the time? No, no. But if I step out of it, remove my anger or my, emotion, um, but put in problem solving and empathy and caring and kindness into it, then I'm like, okay, I love that. That helps me a lot. So when you're in a conversation with someone, what do you think are some key things to do to let them know that you're being open to hear them, and also show them that you, one, care, and two, that you are empathizing instead of just pitying them? Because a
Mm.
lot of my friends sometimes like, no, I just feel like you guys are just feeling sorry for me, and I'm like, no, it's genuine empathy. It's not pity. And like, maybe talk about the difference if you want to share anything around that.
I feel like, well, yeah, pity is being sorry for someone, and with empathy, you don't necessarily need to be sorry for them. It's just it's an understanding of what they're going through, right, and being able to put yourself in their shoes. Um, and like feeling sorry for somebody would be like hearing what they're saying on the surface, and like you're hearing them, right, but you're not like actually listening to them and internalizing and putting yourself in that situation. I don't know if this is like a spectrum thing, but I eye contact is like my thing that I do. I will try to not be messing with anything with like with my hands. I won't have my phone out or something, and then I will look at you straight in the eyes, and I will listen to you, and I will internalize that, and I will listen to every word you're saying, and try and understand the main point of what you're trying to get across, right? If somebody's having a bad day and it's because I don't know, maybe they didn't get like the bonus that they were looking for, maybe their stats aren't in the right spot right there, they're telling you that their numbers aren't low, but what they're really saying is that like it's like a disappointment with what they were expecting, or like they were let down in that sense. And I guess like being able to like kind of see under like the words of what they're saying and more of what they're trying to convey and what they're trying to get you to understand, that would be the difference between like, oh, I'm sorry for your situation, rather than I understand what you're going through.
Yeah, like I've been there rather than, oh man, I can't imagine what that's like.
Oh yeah.
Right? It's it's like I can't imagine that because I'm awesome and I always bonus. No, right? It's like you
Right.
don't want to throw that in their face.
No. Oh, your bonus
It's
was this bad?
yeah,
Mine doubled from last month. So sorry.
yeah. It's like, well, mine went up. If that helps. No, no. You gotta be like, okay, I mean, the last thing I would want is for my check to go down, but also, like, I'm sure you try to extra hard, especially if you're aware of your stats.
Yeah.
Um, there are some people that just aren't aware and they're like, "Oh, my bonus is lower." I'm like, "Yeah, because your stats were lower." But then there's people that are like, "Oh, my bonus is lower because my FCR dropped or this and this," right? And it's like, whoa, or like you obviously paid attention real hard and you were probably doing things that you thought would fix it and it didn't. And it's like, you're stop beating yourself up. And so if someone's opening up to you about that, it's like, well, I'm sure you got this, right? Like I know you know what you're doing. So don't let, the people who impacted it last month, like one call makes all the difference, right? You're gonna stop that one person from hitting that, then you're gonna be better. And then you just talk them up, right? You show them that they can do it, and you refocus. You hunt the good. That's something I always say on the podcast too, and I also find myself saying it to almost anyone I coach. Hunt the good things that you're doing, because if you just give negative feedback to people, it's like, oh, you just think I suck, you don't think I'm good. You got to tell them, hey, these are the good things, please keep doing that. Hey, you're an awesome person, I love that you do this and this. Have you ever thought about working on this part of you though?
Mhm.
That's a hard conversation to have, but I call it the positivity sandwich. Give them the positive stuff. Remind them, please don't change who you are. Please don't change this about you. But maybe you could just back off of this person just a little bit because I see you're kind of hostile towards them. And you say that out of love. And yeah, the person might take offense to it at first, but it's probably because they had no idea they were coming across that way. Right? That would be me. It's like I 100% would want you to tell me if I'm treating a certain person a certain type of way, and I don't even realize it. I'm like, I love that person. I don't want to come across that way. So thanks for telling me. But also it's like I don't I don't do that, right? Like, I kinda get offended in a little bit
Yeah.
of a way. So, I don't know, it's funny the way that comes across, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's like a how dare you. I feel like that kind of ties in whenever like you're not giving somebody empathy, like in an argument as well. It's that kind of like how dare you? Like I couldn't believe that you could be saying this right now. Like what are you even talking about? You know, I feel like it kind of ties in where it's like you're just kind of like listening to respond in a sense
Yeah,
instead of like listening to understand. You know, um,
100%.
that
You're
same
waiting
bit
for
where
your turn to talk.
right, right, or that same bit where if you only have something negative to say, and while it may be true, maybe there wasn't anything good in that call that you listened to, right? Maybe there wasn't, but most of the time, if you're truly listening to understand what that call was and what that person was going through on the call and what they could have done better, then of course there's going to be some good things to that call. If you only have something negative to say, it's like you were listening to respond, or you were listening just to give, like, so you would have some feedback,
Right,
instead of these are good things that you should keep on doing.
right. And honestly, it's my favorite to be able to give them the things they're doing that are good. Like, "Hey, I love that you did this. Please keep doing this. If you did this every time, you would not hear me complaining. Like, keep it up, right?" And honestly, I wish I could give that feedback to people more in just conversations I've had with them. Like, "Hey, the way that you just built your partner up or your friend up by saying how good they are at something, do that more because that one is going to pay off for you and just make you feel happier. Two, they're going to feel inspired because you told them, hey, I'm really proud of you that you're doing this. I have these friends that basically they're kind of at each other's throat a lot, right? It's like,
Mm,
well, he didn't do this or she didn't do that, and it's like they finally recognized it the other day. They had a conversation and they're like, we're going to try to change that. The fact that they did that on their own is a huge step in the right direction, right?
yeah.
Because it's like I've seen it from the outside. I don't have to now tell you that you're going through that. You already realized it. So you can proactively fix it. So I would 100% suggest for anyone to self examine as much as you possibly can. Be like, where are my opportunities before I ever tell you an opportunity? Right?
Mhm.
Like that's there's a Bible verse that basically says take the plank out of your own eye before you talk about the speck in theirs. And so like mind your business, right? Or like Thumper from Bambi says, if you don't have nothing nice to say, don't say nothing at all. I'll quote the theologian, or what's it called? Philosopher Thumper, the philosopher of our time. But it's legit. Like whoever wrote that was obviously wanting to communicate that in such a way that I still remember it. I ain't seen Bambi in a long time, but Thumper got some gold when they shared that. So yeah, do you know any cool quotes about listening that you want to share? I
um
don't know. I just came up with those.
cool quotes about listening. None that I've like
I can't hear
heard.
you. What
Huh?
happened?
Hello? Hello?
No sound. It's me. I bet it's me. Hold on. I gotta check to make sure it's me first. It's me. Look at that. I'm back.
Wow,
Um,
can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, great.
Um, the crazy thing is you're probably saying something amazing, but that just showed us that I was like, "I can't hear you," but the problem was mine, right? Um,
Wow.
yeah, I didn't even
Self-diagnose
mean to
first
do that.
and then look around and see, but check your own first.
Yeah,
It's really efficient as well because if you check your own first, and if everybody were to check their own first, then you would never have to go around and check other people.
that's crazy, right? It's like, oh
Like,
man, imagine if the person that you were, friends with or in a relationship with, if they just 100% check themselves, like, before they wreck themselves. Like sorry, just all the quotes coming out of me. But,
that's great.
like, 100%, like, check that you have no opportunity, or that you at least know your own opportunity, so that when you enter into conversation, you start with, "Here's what I could do better, but here's what I think you could also maybe help me with," right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that cat's tail is gonna knock that mirror off. Okay.
Did you see him fighting?
Yeah, so
Great.
I'm rolling around. I
They're
love
fun.
it. Yeah, having fun. What's your cat's names? You gotta introduce them now.
The orange one, they ran
They
out
ran
as
out.
soon as we started
Yeah.
talking about it. The orange one's name is Garf. The black cat's name is Simon. They're named after Simon and Garfunkel.
Yeah.
Garf is only Garf because, of course, he is orange. So I also wanted to be able to call him Garfield. You
Yeah,
know.
Garfield.
So
Love it.
yeah, Simon
That's
and Garf.
awesome.
I've had them for like I think 3 years now, almost. I think they're about 4 years old.
Yeah.
Beautiful cats. I love them. Love
Yeah.
them to death.
Lots of fun.
I feel like I can hear them speak, and I feel like I can listen to them. You know, sometimes late at night, I feel like we match a wavelength, and we can communicate. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's pretty
Like you're
great.
on a yeah. And the fun thing is about cats too is like they have that extra sensory like feeling that if you are feeling off or wrong or weird, you might notice your cat like hangs out by you
Mhm.
because they want to calm you and they want
Yeah,
to like, and dogs do it too. And it, I never believed it like when I first heard that, but the more I've lived my life with animals around me, the more I've seen it. Like I'll have a bad day at work and my cat, first thing he does when I sit down, he comes and finds me and he sits down with me, right? And sure, he may want me to pet him or something, but it's like that's so awesome that can I be that in tune with other people's feelings that I can help
right.
them?
Where you just kind of know somebody's having an off day, and you're like, "Let me sit next to you and
Yeah,
just soak all that emotion." I feel like it's a pressure that you give off. I feel like cats have an innate sense of like pressure, whether it's like a negative pressure that you're giving off, even with like a physical touch. Like sometimes I'll notice like I'll get pretty close to touching a cat, and they could be looking in the other direction, and then it's like their body reacts before I even touch them, because it's like the pressure that you're giving off almost. You know, it's like the vibes or the energy that you're giving off. You know.
yeah, absolutely. I feel like it's so easy to see someone else and notice they're down. But at times, again, like, you might be feeling down, but you feel the need to put, like, something on to mask that, right? And, like, a mask or but sometimes it's okay to just feel down, right? There's a whole book of the Bible called Lamentations. I don't know if you know what that large word means. I didn't for a while, so I was just like, "Meh," right? But it literally means to complain or lament or like be like, hey, my life kind of sucks right now, right? And it's okay. It's okay that life sucks right now because there is so much good that I could celebrate. I have two kids that are amazing. I have a wife that is amazing. They don't stop being amazing when I'm having a crappy day. They're still amazing.
Yeah.
So, is there anything that you kind of tell yourself that could inspire someone, maybe things like that, or anything that you are just like, when I'm having a crappy day, I think about this obviously your cats, right? That
Yeah,
yeah, they're always having fun in the background, like,
it's
right?
perfect. You know, I love waking up at like 4 in the morning because they're scratching at my door. You know, it's great. You know, and like I'm joking right now. Obviously, it's not great, but at the same time, it is kind of great because I know that they think of me whenever they think of food, but also they think of me whenever they think of love. I hope
Yeah,
love.
so you're
So
the
you know,
provision, you're their love giver,
I'm
like,
their
that's
caregiver.
awesome.
It's
Yeah.
perfect. You know, it's fantastic, and I get to breathe life into these animals. I feel like there's a brewer in Wichita who brews at Wichita Brewing Company, and he has a saying that he goes with of I I think it's another day not promised, right? Where he wakes up every morning and it's another day that wasn't promised. So why would I not be thankful for the day, you know, and try and get everything that I can out of the day? He's great, and I feel like that saying right there is if you can wake up with kind of that mindset of this was another day that wasn't promised. I should take as much as I can out of this day and make this day the most that I can because tomorrow isn't promised and the day after that isn't promised, you know? And I feel like if you live every day where you're doing the best that you can and you're doing the most that you can, whether that be just putting a smile on somebody else's face or bettering yourself in a way, you know, getting into the gym or drinking all the water that you can, you know, like drinking a healthy amount of water, you know, taking care of my cats, you know, building a relationship with somebody, you know, if I can make the most out of that day and do the best that I can, then I feel like I've made that day. But if I go into that day and I think, you know, like it's a whatever type of day, then of course it's not going to be that great of a day because I'm not living like it wasn't promised. You know, I'm not going to take the most advantage that I can out of the day.
A really great, like, idea to live your life. Like, there's that song, Live Like You Were Dying, right? What would you do with your life if tomorrow wasn't promised? Because guess what? It's not. Honestly, you could still die later today, and that's kind of like a crazy way to think about it, but doesn't that want you to make every moment count? Like, it
Yeah,
makes me wanna grab my kids and give them big hugs and, like, enjoy just the relationship that I have, or make sure that my wife says I love you before I walk out the door. I say, "Hey, I love you," or she says it back, right? It's like because I could get in a car wreck and go into a coma and not say it for 20 years, or whatever. Like, we see those movies about that stuff all the time, right? But it's like, do you actually think about that could happen to you, and you, like, the last thing you say to them, like, I just read this book. I'm reading the Stormlight Archives, a super nerd, I know. But there is this scene that you find out what the queen said to the king right before he's assassinated, and basically they were quarreling and they had a fight, and it was something eventually they could have got over, right? But eventually never came because he was assassinated. So it's like, what emotions do you feel? What guilt do you feel? And it's like, you don't have to have that guilt if you left the conversation better, right? If you didn't have to have your own way and point out their flaws, if you just would have realize that what they're doing might not make sense to me, but I hope they're doing it for good, right? Things like that. And again, that's more empathy that you need. You need to try to see it from their perspective. Like, if the Jedi would have just understood where Anakin was coming from, um, they could have prevented Darth Vader from happening, but they they took him for granted. They gave him responsibilities of a master without actually making him one, and that sucks for that kid, right?
just a
Just
title too, just a
yeah.
title.
I love that. Like, it is literally just a word you could give them, right? And maybe a little bit extra pay or something like that, right? Like,
Give him the
I think
bonus. Give him the
exactly.
bonus.
Yeah. I think of that when I think of, like, promotions and stuff at, like, a job. If someone's seeking a promotion, but they're doing the job already, they're just not being paid for it yet. It's like, are they an asset? or are they not? Because ultimately, give them the role they're already doing for your company.
Give them the
And
workload of that asset, but you're not matching the pay. So
yeah,
come
yeah,
on now.
and the pay isn't necessarily it, right? It's just you want that validation of that success of the fact that I've obviously shown them I'm a value. Because that's what I seek more than actually the title or the raise. I seek the I get to now help people. I get to now I think when I think leadership, I think servant leadership. I don't think like, "Oh, yeah, you're subservient to me now." No, I think, "How can I make your job easier? How can I show you the awesome things you do and enhance those and show you the opportunities you have and help you with those?" Because I'm here to help you with both and enhancing what you're good at. I'm good at that. And showing you an opportunity, but how to overcome it. I'm really good at that too. And how I got good at it was going through my own. So I have a story to tell you if you were ready to hear it. How, one of the other things that I think of is, have you ever gone into a conversation where you 100% left it knowing that other person wasn't ready to hear?
Ooh, ooh. I feel like I feel like it happens whenever they've kind of already gone through the conversation in their head and they have something that they want you to say, but it just ain't it, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, escalations all the time. I feel like fall under that for sure. But like with
And of course, like if you have like a personal situation, you don't have to mention names or anything.
yeah, I mean, I feel like I've gone into conversations where like there were I've tried to evaluate the situation from like an outside point of view, you know, remove myself from the situation and see what this other person would decide, you know, whether it be like picking me for a role or, you know, like even just like an interpersonal relationship with somebody, like choosing a relationship or not choosing a relationship. I feel like I've been in situations where I totally expect somebody to say one thing and then um they go the other route, you know, they pick somebody else for the role and I feel kind of let down, you know. It's like,
Yeah.
well, what the heck, you know? But then at that point, you just kind of have to remove yourself from the situation again and then understand that at the end of the day it was their decision and out of your hands, you know.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's it's kind of the same from both sides, you know. While they may see that that's not the answer that I would have wanted to hear, they also know that it wasn't my decision, so I didn't really have a choice in it anyway, and I should just kind of move on, you know. And I feel like that'd be the best way to handle that situation as well, is understand that it's out of your control, and so it's not really worth, I guess, the mental investment to think about it and dwell on it and just kind of ruin your day over it, you know. So
That's definitely what I had to prepare myself for every time. Like I'm like, they don't know what they're missing out on is always what I tell them because I know what I bring to the table. If they're not ready for that to enhance their, team, cool. Okay? But if they are ready for it, I'm glad, right? But I also am like if they're not ready, don't let them be ready, right? Don't let me get somewhere where I'm not going to be appreciated eventually or where I'm not going to be like I'm okay with that. Another thing that I love that you said was like when when you are let down or turned down, you have an opportunity to one choose the positive route or two choose like, oh, maybe I'm not good enough or maybe I'm not uh uh you know all all the things I thought I add, maybe I don't. And that's okay, like to self-inflection and make sure that you do add those things. But if you know that you bring that to the table and they just didn't take it, that's okay. Move forward. Don't feel like an imposter, like, well, I thought I was that person, maybe I'm not. Because that's easy, right? Like that imposter syndrome comes on you and you're like, am I just pretending to be all this? Am I not really what I as good as I thought I was? No. Almost always you're probably your own worst critic, right? I am my own worst enemy, right? It's like if there's this song, it's called "You Can't Stop Me" by enmity, and he's like, there's a whole verse about this guy that's obviously the one tearing him down, talking bad about him, all this stuff, but ends up saying, "My biggest enemy is me, and even I can't stop me." So even though I have those thoughts that tear me down, that are like keeping me humble, at least, right? There's a positive aspect to that, but then there's also a negative aspect if you let it go too far. So stay humble, but also be confident in your own ability. You can't stop me because it's not only me doing it, right? It's my experience, it's what I've gone through, the people who are in my corner, on my side. And like, yeah, if you just are genuinely you, and you're not trying to put on a face to impress people, but you're genuine, you may see other people who do put on that face to impress people get bumped up real fast, get opportunity real quick, but you might see them fumble and fall back down because they weren't truly ready for it. But if you are the one who's like on the sidelines, you're like, "Put me in, coach, I'm ready to play." And he's like, "Nah, I'm good." And you just sit there, right? But you see the strategy, you see the team, you see everything going on. You have a perspective that adds value. Eventually, when you get put in, you're going to bring that perspective to the full front, and you're going to have all that experience of what not to do because you saw what others failed at and how they did that. So be patient, let things happen, and empathize with people, right? I
Yeah.
feel like that's the ultimate, like, rounded out kind of conversation. There is, if you don't empathize, you'll never get to the opportunities that you're wanting, because if you can't feel like empathy for the person who also applied and got let down, or that person who also wanted to buy that big house and hasn't yet, or that person who really wants that nice sports car but hasn't got it yet, like, don't go bragging about it. Go give them a ride, right? Like, don't go bragging about the house that you just got. Help them understand how you got to where you got to, right?
Yeah.
That's the beauty of power, is with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah. Uncle Ben.
Uncle Ben. Love
Yeah.
Uncle Ben. He's got some
And
good advice. Oh.
yeah. Another quote that I was thinking of. I've never actually watched this series, but I've heard this quote online, and I told it to one of our coworkers, Tanner, the other day, and he was like, "Vinland Saga," and I was like, "I guess so." But the phrase "I have no enemies," I think is also really useful with how I kind of take about my
Mm,
day as well. I've never seen the anime. I've heard it, around the internet and around people, and I feel like I internalized that quote, um, in a way of like, if I were to look somebody as an enemy and like not hear them out and only look to resolve something, or not even look to resolve something at all, and just kind of dismiss them because they're an enemy or because they don't think in a way I do, or something along those lines, I feel like I'm limiting myself not only from their input and their view of things, but also kind of sets that standard of how I would take other interactions as well. And so, like, the idea of I have no enemies is like, whenever I'm thinking about anybody, even if they've done me wrong, even if they were mean, or even if they're rude, I have no enemies in the sense of like, if even if they were trying to be intentionally harmful, like, I'm not going to internalize that, and while I may remember it for the next time that we interact, I'm not going to hold it against them, in a sense, where I I still want to help you have a good day, even if you are not cool,
yeah.
mean, I still want to put a smile on your face. So that quote as well, I feel like kind of guides how I handle most of my conversations throughout my day. Is I have no enemies. I don't want to see that. I want to see everybody get better. So that's
That's
another quote that I go by.
Oh, that's solid. Because yeah, I mean, honestly, I know I tie a lot back to other things that you say one thing like, and it leads me to another thought. But like, man, like forgive them for they know not what they do, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's that whole mindset of like they don't even let how they act impact how I do it, right? I control my action. I don't control theirs. So no matter what they do, I intentionally live the way that I should, or whether they're positive or negative, whether they love me, hate me, no matter what, I I'm gonna do what I know to be right, right? I'm gonna do kindness. I'm gonna do love to that person, even if they don't deserve it, right?
Yeah, yeah, 100%, 100%. Because at the end of the day, they're all human. If that emotion was them doing you wrong, at the end of the day, it was only an emotion, and I would hope that they wouldn't do that 100% of the time. But even if they do, it's it. I feel like it's more effort to be mean to somebody than it is to be nice to somebody anyway, as well. Or if you really can only be mean to somebody, then maybe just not at all. If you don't have anything
Yeah.
nice to say, don't say it. Yeah, yeah. I feel like you had mentioned intent, and I feel like having intention in conversation as well is extremely helpful. If my intent for the day or intent for the conversation is to see how your day is going and get a peek into your world, then I'm going to start listening a little bit more into that as well. So having that intention. One of my past partners would love to hear this being said, but like being present in that moment, and fully aware of kind of what that conversation is leading towards, and the point that they're trying to get across is extremely helpful as well. Just living in the moment and having intent with the conversation is something that I try and do in most of my conversations as well.
I love that, because I kind of looked up some, like I did a Google search for kindness while listening, right? And it's four things that you can basically do. So it says listening can be an act of kindness that shows people they are cared about and heard. Here are some tips for being a kind listener. Get ready for this. Be respectful. Listen with understanding and respect and avoid interrupting, judging, or assuming. Be present. Give the speaker your full attention and create a safe space for them to share their thoughts. Be active. Show interest and curiosity by validating the speaker's message, acknowledging their feelings, and focusing on their tone, words, and body language. And lastly, be empathetic. Ask questions, repeat the speaker's last few words, and offer nonverbal cues that you're listening. So, I was
Great.
like, oh my gosh, does that not sum up just all of what we kind of talked about?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
just
Perfect.
organically brought
Mhm.
up what we've experienced, and yeah, 100% just reaffirms and confirms, says it in a more concise way. But honestly, conversation is important around it because, like, you kind of discover it for yourself again. And, like, honestly, having had this conversation tomorrow, I'm probably going to be like, ooh, do I have an opportunity here to maybe listen to them better? Or, oh, there's a person feeling sad. What can I do? What can I do differently? Or, you know, am I actually listening to what my expert is saying, or my person, my customer, whatever? Am I listening to what they're saying, or am I just waiting to overcome it with an objection? Or, what am I doing? Well, like, what are my motives? The really good thing you said with intent is to have that good intentions, and I think that couples together with good motives. If your motive is pure and just, your intention can also be. But if you have good intentions, but your motives are for self gratification, then it's more like, oh yeah, you're awesome because I'm awesome, right?
Right.
It's like, it's like, all right. It just it
Yeah.
says a lot to be intentional and motivated by their um, benefit, right?
Yeah. Because I mean, at the end of the day, while what you can control is usually pretty individualistic, you do have a very big effect on the people that you're around. You know, with the words that you say and how you listen to somebody, and and you can make somebody's day great. You can also make somebody's day not so great as well. So probably better to stick to the great option. You know, probably better to
Yeah.
make other people's day better. So
It's a good thing to put on your resume also, since we're talking about job and everything on accident. Like, honestly, I kind of wanted to keep that talk away, but it's just something we experience every day. And
yeah.
so the other like thing you could think about it, like putting it on your resume is like, I'm really good at impacting environments positively
Mm,
because I help the positivity grow. Like, I never want someone to come into work dreading the day. Like, I never want someone to come in to an environment that I'm in and be like, "Oh, great. What are we coming into today?" And if that is happening, how do I then fix it? Like, I want to see it from their perspective. So when they walk in, if they feel that way, how can I stop that? Like, what is causing that that I can put forth my effort to correct? Like, so I see that affecting them in a certain type of way and I want to stop it, then what can I do to stop it? Like, if it's being caused by something that's outside of my control, is there a way that I can maybe step in, take the brunt, and help? Is there a way that I can maybe follow up once the conversation with other individual is had? Can I then slide by and give a compliment that's going to reboost them back up to feeling positive again? So just looking for opportunities. If you go away from this podcast with one goal and like, I listen to that, now I want to do something, I just don't know what to do, go and compliment someone.
mm,
Like, just go compliment them and let them know what a value they are in your life. If you just tell them that, it's going to go farther than you can imagine. And that's going to turn around because when you sow that good thing into that person, it's going to turn around and make them more positive that day. It's probably going to make someone else more positive. And you're probably going to have to deal with less strife overall just because you took a little bit of time to tell someone you cared about them or pay someone a compliment. Like, I think about the cafe
mm.
workers at T-Mobile. And of course, you obviously know where I work. I mean, obviously, I probably have accidentally worn a shirt on the podcast before because like sometimes I'll just sit down and be like, "Oh, that's a good idea," and I'll just turn it on and start talking. But then like the reason I think about them is like they are there to basically just serve us all the time. And when
Hmm.
I hear about certain people like treating them like poorly, like if they're like oh, that gets under my skin, right? But it's like, what is happening that causes this person to think that's okay? Yeah. And then I go and I try to self-discover, right? I try to be like, especially like one time I found out it was in one of my training classes that the person in my class was treating them poorly. And I'm like, okay, so I'm going to have a conversation with this person and try to discover the whys behind it.
Yeah.
I was just in a hurry and, all this, and like instantly tells me like five things going on in their outside of T Mobile life that is causing them to be stressed out and have a bad day. And I'm like, oh, well, I have some tips for you just to kind of help. And so if I would have just came out that person like, you stop treating them like that, and it would have been a huge opportunity on my part because I just tore that person apart. I instead had a win-win-win situation a win-win-win-win-win situation, like to quote The Office, right? But we when I went in there trying to understand what was happening that was causing the person to negatively treat someone else, then I discovered that they had their own stuff going on and they probably just didn't realize that they were treating them some type of way because they were in a hurry or whatever. Then I just explained the opportunity and how to overcome that, gave them a game plan on how to fix it, and they fixed it. And so we got that taken care of. Did the rest of the opportunities just disappear? No. But did all the stuff happening to her change? No. But she changed the way that she let it impact her day. Change what's on your mind, impact your day for good or for bad, right? Like there's things I say on the podcast consistently because it's like it just makes sense. It just makes sense to do it that way, to say it that way, to allow it to think that way. And someone told me to change the name of my podcast because they were like, on my mind makes me think that you're just going to talk about what's on your mind and not that. I'm like, listen to one episode, like just listen to one. At the beginning of it, almost every single episode, I always say, because what's on my mind impacts my day, whether it's for good or for bad. So let's keep good things on our mind.
Yeah.
So I'm actually talking about your mindset. And like I could change it to positive mindset podcast or, but I like that one because the initials are PMP. And so have you listened to Pimp? But, oh, dad
Uh,
jokes. Here they come again. But ultimately, like, just realize the impact one small change can have. Listen to one episode of this podcast, apply it a little bit. Listen to another episode, apply it a little bit. Change one thing and see if your life doesn't get better, right? See if your positivity doesn't cause other people to be like, oh, I like you, right? Like, and I'm not afraid to tell that to people. Like, Josh, I let you know 100%. I'm like, you're probably one of the kindest people, and I want you to be on the podcast because I want to have this conversation, right? And I feel like I've talked way more than you have. And I'm like, I feel bad because it's like,
don't feel bad.
I invited you to be on the podcast and now I've talked too much. But it's like just having this good conversation with
Yeah.
someone I knows genuinely tries to be kind to people is an awesome thing, right? Like, do you remember the time when we were scouting out new places to play the game that we play?
Yeah.
And we were the only two people that showed up,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
then we just hung out the rest of the night.
It was great.
Um,
It was a
yeah,
blast. Looked
it
at
was a lot of
menus and
fun.
stuff. It was super.
Other people probably just would have been like, oh, "Okay, see ya," but like you just hung out with me that night, and it was cool because it was like we could have just not taken the time, like we could have just taken it for granted and been like, oh, we're just going to move on. But instead, we made the most of it, right? And
Yeah.
we never once played in that place, even though it was fantastic. Um, but but
Uh,
the fun time was had, right? And it was
yeah.
like it's still a cool place. So
Yeah. It was a great conversation. And really, at the end of the day, if I'm going to make the effort to go out, even if nobody else shows up, I'm going to have a good time, and I'm going to try and make other people have a good time as well.
yeah,
Make sure I'm not going to like make sure that everybody's having a good time because I know that can create toxic environments. But
yeah,
if I can myself have a good time and give off that energy, then typically other people will follow suit, which I am very thankful for most of the time. So yeah, going out that night was super fun. I mean, it was a blast. It was some of the best conversation that I've had in that place. So I was I was stoked to hang out with you, Jeremy. It was perfect.
awesome, awesome. Well, I didn't need you to say that. You could have said, "Oh yeah, that was not the best time. It was just awful. No, I'm just kidding. I'm glad that you reciprocate it, because it was like, man, that dude obviously is just a genuinely kind person, and I'm so glad that you could join me on the podcast and just be a part of what I'm doing. Guys, if you want to be a part of what we're talking about, share the podcast with someone you think could use a little bit extra kindness in their life, a few tips on like how to feel better, because I guarantee you I've been there where in certain days I am not this guy, right? I'm not having a good day. I'm like going through crap, and I need people to share a little light, to give me a little boost. And if you could do that for someone, and eventually they feel as happy as I do some days, that's awesome, right? Or like you can be like, "Hey, how are you doing? Have a great day today. You look great." Like, anything. Like this morning I complimented someone. I could tell that they cared about their appearance that day and like put effort into it. So I was like, "Hey, you look great today." They asked me how I was, and instead of responding to that, I said, "Hey, you look great today." And you saw their face immediately light up. And I was like, I hope they have an awesome day, right? And I don't do it like to be like, "Oh, I'm going to tell that on the podcast." I just do it to genuinely impact people, and then I remember it randomly and think of it. But yeah, like do that more, guys. Share kindness with people, and share this episode with people, right? Josh?
Yeah, sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Be kind to others. There's typically no reasons to be mean and negative towards others. And if you can create that space for yourself and give out those good vibes, this world will be full of better vibes. So
Mm.
please give out good vibes.
Positive vibes only. I know this guy who wears a positive vibes only hoodie and doesn't doesn't follow it. Like,
Really?
yeah, I'm like, "Guy,
Critical.
you have an opportunity and it's staring you straight in the chest."
Go look in
Right?
the mirror.
It's like, "You see that? I'm a beast at kindness." But yeah,
Thank you for subscribing to my dad's podcast. Thank you for listening.